Ross Purnell, editor and publisher of Fly Fisherman magazine. Welcome to Loop, where we make deeper connections with the people behind the magazine. We're sponsored today by Patagonia. Our friends at Patagonia have introduced a new line of waders called Swift Current waders. There's an expedition model and a traverse model. They look great. They're super durable. I've worn them all over the world, from Patagonia to Canada, and they're awesome. They're our go-to waders right now, and they are PFAS free, so they don't have those nasty forever chemicals that get into the waterways. So if you're interested in keeping the waterways clean and having a pair of waders that doesn't leak, look at the Patagonia waders. We are also sponsored today by G. Loomis, American-made fly rods manufactured in Woodland, Washington. I've been fishing G. Loomis rods for 20 plus years now. Got started on them from my friend and mentor, Steve Rajeff. The current rods right now are NRX, NRX Plus, IMX Pro, and Asquith. I've got different models of those for almost every purpose, from saltwater to smallmouth bass fishing and trout fishing. Check out G. Loomis rods. And if you enjoy this podcast, please support our sponsors. And you can support us by subscribing to Fly Fisherman magazine. You can go to our website, flyfisherman.com, click the little link at the top right-hand corner to subscribe to the print magazine. You can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are at Fly Fisherman Magazine. On Facebook, at Fly Fisherman. And hopefully you are watching this podcast in its YouTube format on our YouTube channel. It's at Fly Fisherman Magazine. Please subscribe and follow us there. Our guest today is Eric Naguski, an amazing fly tyer, author, guide. And I think one of the most interesting things about our interview today is that Eric is actually a professional ecologist and entomologist. Everybody in the fly fishing community, including myself, thinks we're some sort of an amateur bug guy. But really, we don't know squat. This guy, however, he does know. So it's awesome to have the bug master on Loop to Loop today. Thanks for coming, Eric.
Thank you very much. It's truly an honor to be here. Thanks.
I guess my first question is about your real job. I mean, apart from the fly fishing stuff, like, you're an actual scientist who studies aquatic entomology or water quality. What exactly is it that you do?
Water quality, mainly. At this point in my career, I don't do as much field work as I used to, but when I was in the field as a field biologist, we did a lot of, well, let me back up. I started out as a aquatic insect taxonomist, just strictly in the lab, looking at samples that were coming in. I did a lot of mosquito work, but I also did some non-target insect collection identification for the Pennsylvania black fly suppression program. So Pennsylvania has one of the largest black fly suppression programs in the world. And just to make sure that the pesticide that they're using is not affecting anything else, there's constant sampling of all the rivers in Pennsylvania that the DEP treats. So Susquehanna River, Penns Creek, just to name a couple. And so basically I was just in a laboratory all day looking at immature aquatic insects, looking at the nymphs of mayflies, stoneflies, everything that would turn up in the samples. Always had kind of an interest in it as well. I did some work in school at Millersville with a bunch of different insect classes or orders, primarily, the ones we use for water quality indicators, like stoneflies, caddisflies, mayflies, beetles. I'm probably just the main ones that we use. And as far as that goes, just to sort of a quick overcap of how it works is we go out and we do samples. Those samples are then identified down to genus level taxonomy, and then each specific insect has a pollution tolerance value, so it's a number. So you can run those numbers through a couple different indices and come up with a qualitative score for a certain section of stream, and that's basically what we did. And that way, we can supply that information to decision makers, whether that be government, like local government, or state government, whoever. The data is out there, and they can use those data however they choose to. Try to give them something to make more of an informed decision when they're talking about land development and certain protections for certain watersheds, whether it be ag impaired or a perfectly pristine, exceptional value stream somewhere in the state here in Pennsylvania. And but it's given me a lot of time behind the scope and out in the field collecting bugs. And I've always fly fished too. I mean, I shouldn't say always. I started fly fishing when I was 10. But I've always paid attention to those bugs, obviously. And it just gives me a pretty much a better understanding of not only what bugs I'm looking at, but also their biology. When they're going to emerge, how they emerge, how they mate, how long they're going to spend as adults, how long they spend as immatures. Just a better understanding of the whole system.
So there's baseline or like benchmark data about how many insects there's supposed to be per square meter and of what kind that goes back that you can tell whether the water quality is improving or degrading?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know here in the county that I work in, we sample every watershed on a 5-year rotating basis. So every 5 years we have a new set of data. And we can compare those with the last time we sampled and to see what the trends look like.
And what are the trends? That's my burning question.
Well, it depends on the watershed. Overall, it's getting better, and I think a lot of that has to do with a couple things. One is the funding that the state legislation has committed to, especially in the agricultural community, funding best management practices on agricultural operations, whether it be riparian buffers, whether it be, there's all kinds of best management practices you can implement on a farm. But that commitment that the state legislature has made has really starting to, I see it in my last 20 some years of doing this work, seeing it start to pay off.
It's long-term work, right? It's not like what's happened in the last 6 months. It's like what's been happening decade to decade over time. Like
for sure. We look at
this is a slow-moving. Water quality is a slow-moving process.
Yeah, and actually the insects they're not fast, but they will come back quickly, relatively quickly, in a few years. Say you do a stream restoration project where you get rid of all the silt. All of a sudden now you've opened up all new substrate for different insects to now have places to not only lay their eggs, but also live as immatures, eat, feed, emerge, and just do it over again and increase the population. So those things can come back pretty quick. A couple of years.
One of the burning questions I've wanted to ask to an expert for many, many years, like I've seen some terrible floods over the years, like on my home waters, and I just edited a story on the French Broad River in North Carolina, and went through hundreds of pictures after the flood. I mean, that river was torn up, and I couldn't help but think, like, what happened to the insects? Yeah. Can they survive that?
I'm sure some of them will definitely survive it, and you may see a population drop initially, but over some time in the next few years, you'll probably see those populations rebound, especially when you have an event like that where you do have a lot of sediment, because a lot of times sediment is one of the limiting things for aquatic insects, especially mayflies, caddisflies, stoneflies, at least here in Pennsylvania. And you have sediment buildup, but you have a big flushing of the system like that. It actually might be able to, it doesn't always help, but it could, sort of give the system a little bit of a scour, cleaning, if you will. But I think the overall, the insects are, as long as the water quality is good, and you don't have a lot over too much nitrogen or other chemicals. That could be anything, and that's an issue down there, I'm sure. What else was in that water during the floods? But as long as they don't kill them all, they should come back.
But the big factors in the insect population is basically the sediment, toxins in the water, phosphorus, nitrogen, nasty things like that, and all has to do with the water quality. And
for sure, a little bit of nitrogen and that kind of stuff that allows algal growth, and that the stuff that and the periphyte and the little plants and stuff and animals that grow on the surface of the rocks, that's food for those bugs. So at least the ones that aren't predators. So a little bit of that stuff is good. You need that. There's plenty of places that I've heard over the years that when they started cleaning up septic systems and cabins and stuff, the hatches sort of went down. That's all anecdotal.
Go in the tank. So chicken or the egg? Like, what is you? You're a fly fisher. Is that what sort of led you to your academic studies and your career, or?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I went to school for fine art and minored in religion and philosophy, and became a bartender and a fishing guide. So I went back and got a biology degree, and so.
You can't stay away from the fishing. You're also
a
fishing guide.
Well, right, yeah.
Fly tire. Yeah. Where do you guide?
I'm based out of Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania. I'm pretty comfortable guiding here in South Central PA, central around the Center County area, Poconos, anywhere pretty much east of Altoona, if you had to pick a town, in Pennsylvania for sure.
Wow, that's a pretty big geography.
It is. I mean, I learned how to fly fish in the northern tier of the state as a kid. In the Pine Creek and Kettle Creek watersheds up there. I spent a lot of time up there, and also had some family that had some property along Penns Creek. So all those places I've been kicking around all those places for a while.
It's a fine state if you like to chase hatches, am I right?
It is, absolutely. As probably noted by the bags under my eyes right now. But
you were out late last night on the coffin flies?
I was. I stayed a little too late.
Are they right on schedule this year, or?
Sure. I mean, I think if you give like a 2 week, week and a half, 2 week buffer to when they say any hatch is gonna happen, I think you're in the ballpark. We've been fortunate this year with a lot of water, which just means that everything's gonna hold up a little bit longer for us, the trout water, and it's nice.
So last night you were out fishing the green drake spinnerfall?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And were the fish on them? Or?
They were definitely on them. They were eating them very well, which is probably why I stayed too late.
Okay. So you had it figured?
Yeah.
What's your go-to spinner fly?
For the green drakes, I like a extended body foam coffin fly. It's pretty standard as far as it's got either grizzly hackle for the wings or grizzly hackle tips for the wings, and with a post and a little bit of hackle around there just as a sighter. I like the foam body because it floats really, really well. And there's, a lot of times that spinner fall's happening in the evening and dark, and, I can see the fly, clients can see the fly. With those extended body flies though, I think the big thing is the hook. And I've kind of, over the years, I've kind of settled in on a hook that works really well for that. I use a clink hammer hook, Daiichi clink hammer hook on mine, and I don't have any issues as far as. I don't hook every fish, obviously, but we do. The hookup rate is better with that hook than most.
Is that in your book, Favorite Flies for Pennsylvania?
It is. It is. It's in there.
Okay.
I fished a dun, the green drake dun, any of the real big flies like the hexes or the dark green drake that we have here in a couple creeks. It's the largest mayfly in North America, Little Bronca recurvata. And that's another one that we have the, anything that's really big that I want to float. Because once you start getting into dry flies that are, 2 inches long, that's a lot of metal that you have to float with those hook sizes. And I can get away with a lighter fly that I can throw no problem on a 4-weight, and I don't need anything crazy.
Say the name of that mayfly again.
It's a dark green drake. It's Little Bronca.
Okay.
Yeah.
I ran into that years ago on Clark's Creek.
Yeah.
And I talked to Charlie Meck afterwards, and I was really excited. I'm like, there's green drakes on Clark's Creek. And he's like, no, you got that wrong. And he said that's actually the largest mayfly in Pennsylvania, but it's not actually hexes.
I think there's some nymphs up here somewhere.
Yeah, we'll have to pull those out. We've got, behind Eric, we've got a small sample of some of his specimens he's collected from local streams. They're all in formaldehyde, is that right?
They're in
or alcohol?
ethanol, yeah.
Ethanol?
Yeah.
And labeled. Yeah. So we'll pull some of those out and take the samples. Do you still go out and get samples?
I do.
Or it's like, I've got them all. It's sort of
I do. What I do a lot now is there's a couple that I think there's a couple that I kind of look for that if I lose a sample or something that I see, what I look for is bugs from different places. And mostly that's for color and size, because there's a lot of size variation between a green drake on, say, the central PA, like the Little Juniata or Big Fishing Creek or Penns, and a green drake on the Upper Delaware system. I mean, those flies on the Upper Delaware system are small compared to the female duns on they're close to 2 inches long. And the ones
same species,
different
size.
Just different species. I'm sorry, different sizes. And different colorations too. And you see a lot of variation in color in mayflies anyway. So that's basically what I do. And all right, nerd alert. I have a little caliper and I will measure as many as I feel like I can and get like a average size. That way I know so I'm going to be on the Upper Delaware. And so I need the biggest mayfly I got. They were all between, 15 and 19 millimeters or whatever they are. And that way I can tie the same pattern, just different sizes and maybe slightly different colors. I usually take a photo of the top and the ventral side of the mayfly too. So I get the colors of the mayflies, and I'm over the top on this stuff. I am. I realize.
I love it. That's why I want to talk to you about it.
But I think it's important. I think the biology part, the emergence and the sizes, and it just helps because we're as anglers, fly fishers, we're always so much is out of our control. If we can eliminate even just a couple variables, it's going to put things in your favor. And do you need to know the Latin names? No, but do you know? I think it's probably more important to know their biology and what they're going to look like, and be able to present the fly is obviously the most important thing. But
so apart from size, you've already pointed out how different the sizes can be. That's actually a separate question I have. Well, let's do that one first. Why would they be smaller in the Delaware? I would just like
colder
in my
water.
Mind, oh, okay. To me, it's like, it's a tailwater. They must have more to eat. They should be bigger, is my thinking. But it's colder more of the year because it's tailwater.
So they have a number of degree days that they need to mature, and in those degree days, if they get that amount of time, they're just going to be naturally smaller. If it's a longer period of time, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but those mayflies will. In the colder water, they don't need it. Their metabolism isn't as fast, so they don't need as much to eat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So
It's like
what you have
trout
is
in the winter when it's cold. They don't need as much to eat.
right. And, if you look at Penn's, a stream like Penn's Creek, where it warms up, those bugs are cranking. I mean, their metabolism's going, and they're big.
It's fascinating. It's almost like you're growing grapes for wine. You need a certain amount of sunshine
Right.
days.
Right. Exactly.
And these mayflies
Yeah.
have like a certain amount of temperature days.
Absolutely.
they
Just
need
like
to
the
get big.
plants. That's why I
Or
think
tomatoes.
right, exactly. Any plant has the same thing, degree days. And I think if you want to try to guess when you think you're going to see the bugs, it's almost better to look at the plants, because a lot of times the plants that you're seeing in bloom, let's say it's a flowering plant, at the time when you're seeing green drakes, well, I remember that because that's every year. That's the same flower I see when the green drakes are about to happen. It's like the forsythia and Hendrickson's in the springtime, around here.
And what's the plant for green drakes?
Mountain laurel's a
Yes,
good
sir.
one.
Is it?
It's getting, it's starting to bloom. When mountain laurel starts to bloom, I think is a good one.
I think of that for sulfurs
Yeah,
normally,
but they're about the same time.
yep.
Depends on where you are,
Yeah.
you know.
And your elevation and stuff.
Yeah.
So we talked about the size. What's the other thing that you think fly tyers get wrong because they're not going off of actual samples or not looking at the actual bugs?
I think
where do fly tyers often go wrong?
I think that you're going to catch fish some of the time, for sure, on just generic patterns. I think the imprint of the fly in the surface film is important. I tend to tie hackled flies with maybe a slightly larger hackle than some people, because I want that imprint on the water, like the legs of that mayfly. I also want the body of that mayfly. Unless I'm fishing really fast water, I want that abdomen and thorax of that bug to be sitting in the surface film. I fish a lot of cripples and emergers too. I think, especially on heavy hatches, I've seen, and let me back up. It's fly fishing. This is all anecdotal. I could pretty much say whatever I want, and nobody can say, "Oh, you're."
No, but you're a scientist.
Yeah, but it's just observation over time, really, and I see, especially on our really heavy hatches like our sulfurs and our green drakes and our big blueing olives, the drunellas, where there's just a ton of bugs on the water. I see fish really start to key in on struggling either emergers or, a dun that's got one wing up, one wing down, flopping around. So I tend to fish a lot of those kind of flies patterns. That could just be a fact that maybe not everybody else is fishing those as well. So Pennsylvania's crowded. There's a lot of really good fly fishermen in Pennsylvania, for sure. And anything I can change up just slightly, I think might be an advantage to me.
I'm a big believer in that. Like, not just does the fly have to be an accurate representation, but I think there's a lot of mojo in having a fly that is not for sale in the boxes at the local fly shop that everybody else is using, like something just a little different.
Yeah, for sure. I love that Gallup's cripple with the bent shank. I mean, I love that fly. And I've seen fish that I've put 6 different patterns over that fish, and that fish is still eating constantly. First drift with that thing, and it eats it. It's like,
now, I think of that as a very Western fly.
right.
But is that in your book, favorite flies for Pennsylvania?
No.
But you do use it in
I
Pennsylvania.
use it quite a bit. The flies in the book can go anywhere. I mean, it's.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is a great hatch state, and the trout are highly educated and stuff. But I think it's an amazing testing ground, because if it works here, it sure as hell is going to work at some cutthroat trout stream in Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And I think, if you look at in the beginning of the book, I go through some history of some of the more famous fly patterns and, the people who originate them. And, of quite a few of them are from Pennsylvania. You know, you're looking at like the Elkirk Altroth, Pennsylvania, Chauncey Lively, Vince Marinero, Charlie Fox, Bob Klauser. You know, the list goes on. You know, it's
quite the fly tying legacy.
It is.
So, and you live in an area like you just mentioned all these names where all these famous fly tyers come from. Who were your big mentors, like personally, when you were coming up in this world? Yeah,
unfortunately, I didn't really have a mentor. I lived pretty close to. I grew up in Hershey, not too far from Bob Klauser's shop, but I never went over there to get any fly tying stuff. All my tying and everything came from books, and just sort of trial and a lot of error. But again, I was still, even younger when I was younger, I feel like I was cognizant of where I was and what was going on. And I'm looking at some of these beautiful catskill flies, and I'm thinking, those things are awesome. But I'm like, it doesn't look like the bug that I'm seeing. And it doesn't float like what I need it to do. The Latort is flat. You know, I don't need a big hackled fly. And Vince's thorax duns and those types of flies are, you know, obviously developed for that kind of water. And that translates into all the tailwaters all over the place, like the upper Delaware system and those kinds of places. So I just started looking at colors that I was seeing on the real bugs and started tying more flush floating flies, not so much catskill, but more parachutes and comparadons and things like that. And, you know, Hatches was a good book for me as far as that goes. But
what's your favorite hatch in Pennsylvania? Like, what do you look forward to on January 1st?
The Dronellas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. When does this happen?
Usually about a week after the drakes, or about the week. Sometimes they overlap, but about a week after the drakes usually. And the fish are still looking up. The fish love to eat them. You have Drunella cornuta. There's like three main ones that there's probably four, but three of the bigger ones, they're all pretty much the same size. The cornutas, walkeri, and tuberculata. But I think maybe it's just because it's a daytime thing, and I'm so tired of fishing at night that it's. But the fish, if you get a rainy day, a drizzly rainy day, like the end of the first week of June into the second week of June, it's just the crowds are gone from the drakes, and it can just be really, really fun.
People got worn out from the drakes and the sulfur, and it's kind of like a sweet spot. Huh?
Yeah, it is. And everybody loves the Hendricksons. I mean, Hendricksons are great because it's the first big upright wing you see. But I like olives too. I mean, I feel like I wind up fishing the little blue-wing olive hatches probably is more than anything else, really, that and terrestrials. But
I've been making a mistake, obviously. So I'm fishing hard like trout in May, and by the time June comes around, I usually get in the raft and go smallmouth bass fishing. But
that's not a mistake. That's really fun. I mean,
I need to look for the Drunellas, evidently.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It really is. And I've just had some amazing, amazing days with that bug, and nobody in sight.
Are they on all the spring creeks?
No. We have a few on the Yellow Breeches. The Northeast has a whole bunch. They're pretty heavy in the Pine Creek watershed. I don't know that I've ever run into them in Kettle or over that way, but certainly around Central PA, they're around.
Okay, I'm fishing the wrong places at the wrong time.
Oh, I mean,
I'm sucking out all of the knowledge. I love it.
That's all right. I mean, I don't know. I with guiding, honestly, the hardest part for me about guiding is giving somebody a quality experience and getting away from other anglers, and it's really hard, especially for me and in the Yellow Breeches and the South Central and the central part of the state. So anytime I can get away and have some space to move around, and I think it just is better for everybody involved.
Yeah. So are you primarily a trout guide or a bass guide?
No, I do
or
both.
You do it all?
Yeah, in fact, this spring I've probably done equal smallmouth and trout for pre-spawn. The bass fishing has sort of picked up in the last 3 years for me, and that's mainly just because I got a boat. But it's just something that I've always done too. Living in this area, growing up in this area, I fished the Susquehanna as a kid, and that's what we did in the summertime.
How'd you get started fly fishing?
Well, I have a cousin who knew that I liked to fish, and my father was a sailor. We had a sailboat on the eastern shore of Maryland. I don't remember sailing a whole lot, but I remember being in the marina a whole lot. And I'm talking like little. Like I learned to walk on the sailboat, swim, everything. And I don't really have memories of a time when I wasn't fishing. Like I remember, but in a timeline of my life, I was always fishing because I had nothing to do while we were in the marina, so I just fished. And so I was about 10 years old, and my cousin, who had a camp up in between Slate Run and Cedar Run on Pine Creek, he stuck a fly rod in my hand, and I guess the rest is history.
So these are all in the vials. They're all aquatic insects, but that leaves out a lot of other categories. Like you wrote a story for Fly Fisherman magazine called "Freshwater Isopods." It's on Fly Fisher. It was in the print magazine, but now it's on flyfisherman.com. That's a whole other category of crustaceans,
Yeah,
am I right?
yeah, and there's a ton of them around here. We have, even all the spring creeks and sort of our, I don't know if you want to call them fusions, spring creeks or whatever. Like the yellow breeches, for example, is absolutely loaded with crust bugs. And the cool thing about the spring creeks and crust bugs, especially for the way I like to fish, not only for myself but when I'm guiding, is the sight fishing aspect of it. Like I typically fish a single crest bug to a feeding fish, and the water is so clear, and you got to be in the right position, and you got to make the right cast, and it's not the easiest fishing, but it's pretty cool to hook into like a 4 or 5 pound wild rainbow. And
That's some New Zealand stuff right there.
No,
But in your
it's Cumberland
backyard.
Valley stuff. I don't know. It's what I've always been doing. I remember going down there as a kid to those spring creeks, and you see the fish eating them it's crystal clear. You can see the fish behavior, and it teaches you a lot about fish behavior, their movement, their moods, what they're doing. Like I can say, that fish, he's probably not a player, but that one over there, that's a fish we can catch.
Just watching the fish, you learn so much.
Oh.
You don't have to catch fish. Just standing there watching or being frustrated by them, you can learn a lot.
For sure.
I'm sure that's sent you back to the vise many times.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think the crust bugs, like the article I have, my crust bug pattern, that was, I don't know, 20 years in the making of standing down there, and watching those fish eating. And I had a couple of iterations that caught fish, but they weren't exactly right, and in my mind, and kind of finally dialed it in, and I'm pretty settled on this one at this point. But there's always room for improvement, though. Who knows?
Have you tweaked that one, or are the crust bugs pretty much the same?
It's still working. Occasionally, I'll mess around with it. I've tied different hooks and things like that, but the basic structure is pretty much the same.
In terms of, are crayfish a crustacean? They must be.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a hot crayfish pattern?
I do. I one that I'm pretty happy with. And actually, I came up with it when my friend Jake Villock was writing his book. And we were talking about crayfish patterns, and he's got a really nice one too. And the crayfish, it's just a single articulation that when you strip the fly, the way it's weighted, it mimics the kick of the crayfish's tail. So It seems to work. I don't know.
Yeah, they work. They work like a hot damn. Actually, there's this question are crayfish patterns cheating?
No.
Because they work that good. Twice this year I've caught smallmouth bass, and you go to take the fly out and you look down in his mouth and there's a crayfish just with the claws like at the back of his throat trying to claw his way out.
Yep.
And the fish just ate a big crayfish and then comes over and eats a game changer. It's like they're insatiable.
Yeah, I see that all the time. It's interesting, isn't it? I've seen it with
crayfish
trout,
still alive. You've seen it with trout?
Oh, yeah.
The crayfish trying to crawl its way out.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
I don't fish enough crayfish for trout. I should.
Yeah, you see them all over the banks, like at Penn's and Juniata. They're all over on the shallows. It's like the big fish have to be eating these things.
That's something I should do, but I don't. Maybe I will.
Yeah, because you're too busy dry fly fishing.
Right, right. See, that's a good point. If I had a chance at a say a 24-inch fish on a crayfish or a 20-inch fish on a dry fly, I'm taking that 20-inch dry fly every time.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't? Getting back to the fly tying, what do you think is the biggest improvement in like fly tying materials or tools the last 20 years? I mean, materials have changed a lot in just 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the amount of materials available to the tyer is just amazing. I mean, the internet hasn't hurt fly tying, the learning curve either. I mean, it's a lot different, watching a step or looking at a step-by-step photo in a book and then watching someone actually tie it either in person or by video. I mean, in person is really nice because you can ask them, say, hey, wait, can you go back and show me that again? Like, that was kind of cool. How did you do that? But I think like some of the waterproof materials like the EP trigger point fibers and that kind of stuff is really nice for wing materials and even bodies on some flies. I think hackle in the last 20 years has gotten really good, better than it had been. There were always really nice, chickens out there that you could get your hands on, but like whiting and those guys are just putting out some amazing feathers now for all kinds of flies. Whether it be the articulated streamer stuff, some of those bigger, like leggy boys, those changer type flies. But the feathers are amazing, and that kind of and all the new materials and all the collaboration that's going on between people. It's super cool. That whole community, the whole tying community is really cool. Everybody that I know is super nice and willing to share ideas and, hey, this is what I did. This is what the fly, to get the thing to swim right. And it's neat. It's fun going to the shows and the International Fly Tying Symposium when you go there and do some stuff there. It's always really fun to see what people are doing and what they're coming up with. And I don't know. It's just neat. I think the vices haven't changed a whole lot, but, I'm still tying on old Renzetti that I've had forever, but
they don't wear out.
No.
It really is a golden age for fly tying, and it seems like there's young people getting into the sport, but I don't know many of them are picking up fly tying. Some are, but I wish they would more. It's really like in terms of materials and the learning curve, it's so much easier now to churn out really good stuff. And it makes fly fishing fascinating.
It does, and I think this is weird, and it sort of just came to me now, but I feel like it makes you a better angler because you can take what you have seen on the stream that day and say, okay, well, my fly wasn't really the right size, or it wasn't really floating the right way that I was seeing those bugs that were getting eaten, and how can I solve that problem? And then you can go back to the vise and sort of tweak those patterns around to get them to do what you want to do with it. And Okay, well, I really like the way this parachute floats, but I was fishing, those fish were eating in faster water. It wasn't floating real good. What can I do do I need to add some sort of buoyant material in the abdomen, or, I don't know, but, just.
In terms of materials, what I think is one of the things I think is amazing is the change from epoxy to UV resins. I mean, holy smokes! I learned to tie surf candies down at Bob Clauser's shop, and we had these like rotary things where you had to put the epoxy on and turn it for 24 hours.
Right, I have one collecting dust.
It would get
for sure.
lopsided and stuff. It's so much easier now. It's crazy.
It is. And when Popovic's, he's found that dental, like the UV stuff. That was like, wow, that was the beginning of all of it, of the UV stuff, and the UV stuff is pretty amazing, for sure.
Cool stuff. So what do you think is the most frustrating? You've said what's your favorite hatch. What's the most frustrating hatch, do you think, that's a real head scratcher? Is it?
I don't know that it's a specific one. It's when you have multiple bugs at one time. Like you have like last night, for example. I mean, the fish were eating drakes, no problem. But last night I had March brown spinners, gray fox spinners, dun caddis, probably 2 different sulfurs. I had green drakes. I had some other little caddis. I had there was something else. The orange Cahills. I think that's about it. That's 7 or 8 different flies. And some days, one fish will be eating one thing, and then the next fish will be eating something else, and then the next fish will be eating something different, and you just have to kind of cycle through the flies until you figure out which ones that they're gonna eat. Again, a lot of times on the real heavy hatches too, they get picky, and as much as I love that Drunella hatch, sometimes they can be really tough on that when they're eating that bug, and I think what happens is during the spinner falls, the females, once they get rid of their eggs, their body contracts and they're smaller than what you think they are. And by like at least a size, maybe even more. And I think that I've had to sort of adapt to that and make some of my Drunella spinners a size or 2 smaller than what the dun would be.
Okay, that makes sense.
They get shorter and fatter. And the Drunellas are already kind of stocky. They're like little muscle men.
Yeah. As a guide, do you find yourself changing flies more often? Is it more like make a better cast?
Well, yeah,
that
for
is
sure.
always the
100%.
question, right?
I mean, that's the thing, and people always talk about flies and tying and do this. I mean, if you can't cast, it makes things really hard. That casting thing is so important. I would encourage people to save some money on the fly rod that they're buying and pay for some casting lessons and get out and practice.
I have watched a lot of fly fishermen over the years make a couple casts and then change their fly, and I'm like, that fish, you didn't make a good cast yet. You know what I mean?
No.
If you described a situation where there's like 7 different hatches going on, the fish is not swimming 2 feet to get your fly, man.
No.
It's got to be right there.
And even that, I see this with like guiding, with nymphing all the time, with just bobber fishing. I think people move too fast, for one, and you can put the same fly through that same feeding lane 50, 75, 100 times. On the 101st time, they eat it. I wish I knew. I don't know why, but I don't know if they don't see it the other time or they just didn't present right. But I think slowing down, and really thoroughly working the spot, especially if you know there are fish there. I mean, it's hard. Not everybody's on the water as much as I am, but there's some places, and I have people say this to me all the time when I'm guiding, saying, man, after we catch a fish on the 150th cast in the same spot, like, man, I would have left here 20 minutes ago, if I was by myself, and I was like, well, I know there's fish here.
Yeah. I think with the fish that takes on the 100th cast, my theory on that is it's kind of like ADD under there. Like there's a lot of stuff in the water. Like
Absolutely.
they're watching 100 things going by all the time, little
Yep.
specks of flotsam, jetsam. Like there's a lot going on
There
there.
is.
It's
And
hard
they
for
mouth
them to, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry. I didn't
I mean, there's a ton going on, right? And one time your fly becomes the focus, they're actually looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, with my nymphing on my guiding, I have like I don't know, maybe 8-10 patterns that I just kind of cycle through. And, there are a few that I know that in the past experiences told me, well, they're either going to eat this one on the first few casts or they're not going to eat it. And like something big, like a worm or something like that, or like an egg pattern or something like that, they typically eat them, or they don't eat them at all. And but some of the other ones, I just kind of cycle through and hope for the best. And if we get good drifts, good drag-free drifts, eventually we're gonna get a fish to eat the fly.
Those big patterns like the junk flies, eggs, and worms, you do those first or last in the cycle? What's your strategy usually?
If I know there's a bunch of stock rainbows in there, they're going on first.
Okay, yeah. Depends on the fish. Huh?
Yeah, 100%. And the angler that I have, some people don't really like fishing those flies, but they still want to catch fish, and they may gripe a little bit, but they're still giggling when they're hooked up to fish, So
it's always good to get results.
exactly. I don't have any qualms about using those flies. I don't do a whole lot of nymphing on my own, but can certainly do it, and it's super effective. People want to catch fish.
What kind of fishing do you do on your own when it's your day off? What do you do to go?
Well,
fishing?
I'm depending on the time of year. If there's any chance that I can sight fish for any fish, that's what I want to do. Whether it be fishing to a rising fish, or if I'm going to go to the Spring Creek and fish a single crust bug to a fish or whatever, fish redfish. It doesn't matter. If I can see the whole thing go down, I'm in. 100%. I'm in. Could be a carp, could be whatever, a muskie. I don't care. As long as I can see it happen. Striped bass on the flats, that might be one of my favorites. But yeah.
Have you figured out the carp fishing?
No. I figured out that they're probably the smartest fish in the river. At least the most aware.
Yeah. Have you caught one on the
Oh,
Juniata?
Yeah.
Sight fishing to it? Dang.
Crayfish.
That's what I've always tried. I've never been able to catch one on that river.
Yeah. I mean, you got to find.
They're insane.
They are. And they got to be really involved in what they're doing. You got to get one that's really preoccupied with feeding, which is tough because especially on a busy river like that, there's boats and kayaks and tubers and people throwing flies at them and, who knows what else. So
They got everything coming at them
they
from
do.
every side.
They do. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. My dreams are to get a carp and a muskie. Those are my big Juniata River targets.
Right.
And it's frustrating because I see them all the time and can never catch them.
Yeah, the muskies are a challenge.
Have you got one of those?
Oh, yeah.
On what kind of flies?
I usually fish big, like changer type flies. That's pretty much all I fish for.
And you go fishing specifically for the muskies?
Mm-hmm. I run muskie trips in the winter. We do combination trout muskie stuff, and but yeah, I mean, some days are horrible. Some days we have some interactions. Some days we catch fish.
That's my problem with muskies. I've never gone fishing specifically for them. I just run into them and then wrong fly, don't have wire on.
Right.
And, it's a catastrophe.
I think, and that's the other great thing about here. I could be, living around South Central Pennsylvania. I could be muskie fishing. I could be smallmouth fishing. I could be trout fishing, all within half an hour. It's pretty neat.
Jumping back on the fly tying thing, you do the fly tying symposium every year?
Not every year. I didn't
Hang
do it
out
the
with the
last.
crew?
I didn't do it the last I didn't do it last year. I did it the year before last. I can't remember why. I had a schedule conflict last year. But I have done it in the past and gone and, done the whole featured tire and given some talks and demonstrations and things like that. I love it. I like that show a lot.
What do you usually show off when you're demonstrating there?
I think I usually try to show some of the different emergers and cripples that just some little techniques that I've sort of honed in on over just dealing with certain materials. Like I use a lot of CDC in my emerger patterns and just sort of some new ways to incorporate some other materials. I'll take one of the things that I like to do is I fish a lot of biot dry flies, and I'll run the biot down, but and I don't know, I got to ask some chicken person this. I don't know what the little things are called on the biot that stand up that make it segmented. I don't know what those little teeth are called.
They're not barbs?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think they're barbs.
Are they barbs? I'll take another material. I like stuff like Hens makes this thing called, oh shoot, I'm going to forget it now. Anyway, it's a real thin diameter, flat, like translucent, like kind of like a floss. And I'll run that in between the barbs, if you want to call them that. So that gives it like a two-toned effect on the fly. Turns out pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because if you look at like...
Do you wrap them together? You wrap the biot first, and then you wrap the other material
in between,
in the gaps.
In the gaps, yeah, exactly. I do that for a couple of different flies. My Hendricksons, I'll do that quite a bit. I'll either use a pink or like a olivey pink biot, and then run the opposite color, whether it be pink or olive, in between them. Because our Hendricksons are olivey, pinkish color, tannish olive pink.
Wow!
But it comes out pretty neat, and I'll do that with some other ones, depending on the mayfly.
That sounds like a killer Hendrickson. What's the wing? This is an emerger?
Yeah, that one I tie like it's for the emerger. I tie duns like that too, but the emerger is kind of like I'm basically ripping off Rene Harrop, his captive dun. It's pretty much the same fly.
That's a good person to rip off.
Yeah, I mean, all fly tying's derivative, unless you're Blaine Chocolate, and so. But hey. I'm not saying I came up with it for sure, and that's the other thing. Like with the internet and social media, so you see so much cool stuff out there. It just sparks the creative juices and just gets you going on stuff. You see that's really cool. I think I could do that with this or that. It's neat.
Is that Hendrickson pattern in your book, or that's a new one?
I don't think it's in the book. I'm sure it's on social media, so I'm sure I have photos posted of it.
I'll have to grab some of those.
Yeah, they're cool.
What's your website? Tell us about your social media. How do people get in touch with you?
Okay, yeah.
I want to know more.
The website is www.riseformsflyfishing.com. I think Facebook is just Eric Naguski. It's just me. And Instagram is Riseforms FF.
Can people buy flies from you?
Rarely. Rarely. I do some orders for some longtime clients.
But you're not trying to do that.
No, I'm not good at that. I can't. I'm not really good at sitting down and tying like 5 dozen of the same fly. A dozen or two maybe, but.
You put too much love and work into each one to make it productive.
I don't know. I'm not a real fast tyer. Too easily distracted, and and I'm always playing catch up for flies just for myself. So it's always a thing.
Your flies are beautiful, though. You're incredibly gifted.
Thank you
I'm
very
a huge
much.
admirer.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Beautiful proportions and colors and. I mean, your entomology background really shows. They're beautiful flies.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. Like I said before, anytime we can eliminate any variable, I'm doing it. Like if it's tippet, I'm 100% fluorocarbon tippet. Just anything I can do. Walk softly, when I'm walking along the stream, in the stream, try to think heron, not water buffalo, kind of like, so, try to move intentionally. Position when you're fishing to not just dry fly, but also nymphing, getting yourself, if you can, physically, safely get yourself in the right position, I think is a big thing. It makes your life a whole lot easier and can really make presenting the fly naturally a lot easier. Sometimes it takes a little bit more effort, but I think it can be pretty important.
Now, when you're fishing crust bugs, I know that you have a single fly, very precise weight. You see the fly and you're kind of high sticking it down to the fish very precisely. Do you use those kind of techniques for other kinds of nymphing?
Not really.
That's really a crust bug specific
That's like a
thing.
sight fish. I see that fish. A lot of times what I'll do for that is these fish, they like every other fish in Pennsylvania, they see a lot of people. So a lot of times what I will do is I'll cast, and I do this with dry flies too, I'll cast way past their feeding lane so they don't even hear that, or hopefully they don't see or hear that fly hit the water. Then I will lift my rod tip up enough that I'm literally dragging that fly into their feeding lane, and then I'll drop the tip. When I drop the tip, that gives me enough line to get to the fish, and I've eliminated that splashdown. And hopefully, the other thing with that is sometimes I'll put that fly on the bottom and hope that it hangs up, and then I can slowly strip it, almost like you would strip for like a bonefish or like a permit, like a crab, and just slowly drag it across the. And I've seen fish just lose their minds.
That's totally a bonefish technique.
Yeah.
They're bonefish coming over there,
Yeah.
you just drop it and it's just not moving and sitting there. And
Move it really slow across the bottom, move it across like a crust bug moves across the bottom.
the bottom dragger.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks for coming into the studio and
Sure.
doing the podcast with us. It was awesome
Yeah.
getting to know you better.
Yeah.
Usually when I'm with you, we're fishing so hard we don't get a chance to talk.
Right. Different boats. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can do it again.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. We'll get out soon in the next month.
Cool.
If you want to get a hold of Eric, Riseforms,
Flyfishing.com.
Riseformsflyfishing.com.
Yeah.
And look up his article on flyfisherman.com and follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are at Fly Fisherman Magazine, on Facebook at Fly Fisherman, and you can watch this podcast and other podcasts on our YouTube channel at Fly Fisherman Magazine. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an honor.